Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Claire and today we have chapter 2 of Aroids, plants of the Aurum family by Bown.
This is my key. I think they are so cool. That's just gorgeous. That's it. And I just want to surround my house with them.
And it did nothing and then it died. This chapter is incredibly interesting. Not that the others aren't interesting, but this one was just like, holy goodness. It is called Of Tales and Traps and the Underworld, Mechanisms of Reproduction. So, as an overview, this chapter is looking at how various species of aroid trick creatures into helping continue the family line. It is about reproduction, how these plants manage to reproduce, and it's absolutely fascinating because some of them are such savages. It's like, holy goodness. A large part of this chapter, a part of the conversation around pollination with regards to aroids, especially in this book, is about the scent. If you have never smelt an inflorescence before, I mean, I haven't, none of my inflorescences have actually smelled enough for me to notice it and to be bothered by it, but some of them have quite a scent. And Danny notes that although we as humans were not designed to be flower pollinators, we still smell the scent and it still has an effect on us. Maybe not the intended effect and the desired effect that it may have, say, on a specific species of fly, but we smell it. We definitely smell it. In terms of the scents that flowers and inflorescences and various pollination equipment, in terms of the scent that they put out, you can range anywhere from really lovely perfumes from like your roses and your jasmine and your, what else smells good, I don't know, other plants, to horrific, completely horrific, smelling like rotting meat, smelling like garbage, smelling like who knows what, and we don't want to know what. And there's probably not a plant family that has every single, like the whole range of scents in its flowers, because there's a lot. That's the point. There's a lot. But the plant that is most famous for smelling horrible is the Amorphophallus family. I got my first Amorphophallus at the last Aroid Society meeting, and I'll just grab it. This is it. It is an Amorphophallus opitus, and I got it because its stems are beautifully pink, and the leaves, if you can see them, have pink edges to them. So it's the nicest Amorphophallus that I had seen. So I bought it, and my friends at the meeting were like, "Whoa, you don't want that near you in a year's time when it does flower and smells like death." Something that has been discovered and noted in terms of the sense of inflorescences is that plants seem to have the ability to not only target their scents to a specific, niche or audience of animal bug life, but they also have specific times. So they turn on and off, I suppose. It says, many turn their fragrances on and off each day during the flowering period with great precision so that the right pollinators are attracted and no energy is wasted in producing chemicals and releasing scents when the objects of the exercise are inactive. So if you are a plant whose primary pollinators are most active early in the morning, you will be putting out heat, you'll be putting out scent early in the morning to attract those. Same goes if they are dusk or midnight frequenters of the world. And something else to note is that aroid inflorescences produce heat. It was a French naturalist, his name was Jean Lamarck, in 1788, who first reported that aroid inflorescences produce heat, a trait that has subsequently become a hallmark of the family. This is called thermogenesis. So thermo as in heat, genesis as in like beginning. It's silicic acid that does that. So that's a fun fact. And in case you don't know what silicic acid is it's in aspirin. And sometimes it's in like skincare and stuff. So that's interesting, but it functions as a hormone in terms of, in like aroids with inflorescences for thermogenesis. And so it helps the heating process and also the production of odors. So who knew? Silicic acid. Another point to make about the timing of not only the thermogenesis, the heat, and the scents released by the plants is it's a mechanism to avoid hybridization and like cross-species pollination, because in the wild, if you're a veitchii wanting to make more veitchii babies, you don't want it accidentally crossed with a crystallinum. Okay, so those are just examples I pulled out because that's what I saw, but it's very deliberate and very precise so that there isn't any mix-up, so that a species does not become extinct to make way for a hybrid because, you know, bugs got their wires crossed or whatever. And the spathe and spadix combination that makes up an inflorescence often is in quite the position to shelter whatever insect or bug or creature it is attempting to attract. So you've generally, your spathe is like cocoony, especially in like your philodendrons, quite cocoony, only opens at certain times, and it can like hold them and feed them and keep them warm and happy. And there's a little bit more, but we'll touch on that in a second. Yeah, they provide quite a home. Everything is very specific and is very tailor-made to whatever bug, essentially, or insect the plant is trying to attract. And so that heat produced by the spadix creates a little microclimate. Once inside the spathe or once around the spadix, insects become more active because it's warmer and they can move around better, or because there's sweet juices that they want to eat and get energy from and all this other stuff. It goes into a bunch of technical sciencey stuff about like the carbohydrates in the various and the way that they're used in the various species of plants and genus to try and like attract things. And I don't know if that's the sort of thing you want me to go into, like real deep into like your lipids and your fatty acids and everything, but let me know and I can provide information like that. But suffice it to say, an inflorescence takes a lot of energy and a lot out of the plant. And if you've ever had a plant that is flowering, or you've had an inflorescence on one of your plants, especially a big one, you won't generally be getting a lot of flowers at the same time, depending on, you know, how much energy you've given it. But general rule is flowers take a lot out of you. So again, with heat, the thermogenesis, it's usually produced by the sterile flowers on the spadix, if you remember from chapter 1. And if you haven't seen chapter 1, go and watch chapter 1. I'll link it somewhere. But generally, there are sterile plants. And those are the plants, supposedly, that produce the heat. But not necessarily the odor. So remember, the heat helps get the odor out there, but the odor can arise from either the spadix or the spathe. It's kind of just a whatever, either or. Another little bit of glossary for you. The tip of the spadix is called the appendix. Kind of makes sense. I'm going to read this paragraph from the chapter because I think it's really interesting and quite telling. And it's got the heading, Shades of Deception. The irresistible smell that first draws the insects to the open inflorescence is just one of a series of confidence tricks. It may suggest carrion, excrement, fungi, overripe fermenting fruit, or decaying vegetation, but several other deceits are needed to complete the illusion. The combination of heated spadix and concave spathe provide the warmth, humidity, and shelter that the insects expect from breeding or feeding grounds. Colour and texture also are important, and species that mimic decaying matter often have brownish, greenish, or maroon coloration, and various devices such as twisted appendages to imitate shrivelling tissues and leathery, hairy, or warty surfaces to look like skin and hair or mouldy surfaces. None of that sounds attractive. That all sounds very horrible to me. All these features make up what is recognised as the trap flower syndrome. Unlike most other pollination devices, the trap flower syndrome does not require the insects to be part of a reciprocal arrangement whereby they receive rewards, usually food in the form of nectar and pollen, for carrying out the role of go-between. Trap flower artificers deceive the insects, mostly flies and beetles, into visiting the bloom, retain their interest by false pretenses, and in many cases imprison them too. In addition, the most sophisticated traps have areas of refractive tissue that take advantage of an insect's reflex to fly towards the light, and thus direct the captive's movements during detention. So it not only does it lure them in, it traps them there, and then it confuses them so they can't get out. The trap flower syndrome is an excellent example of convergent evolution. And it's not just the aroids that have, and it's not all aroids that have evolved, developed, learnt to do this, but I think it's absolutely fascinating. And then we get on to how they resemble other plants like pitcher plants. And their traps are superficially similar to pitcher plants with hooded tubular chambers, light windows and greenish maroon coloration, but differ significantly in being trap leaves, not trap flowers, their flowers being produced quite separately. Nevertheless, several observers have suspected that, like carnivorous pitcher plants, certain aroid inflorescences kill and devour the insects they waylay, which is incredibly fascinating, and it really makes me want to buy a bunch of insects and have a bunch of flowering aroids and just let loose and like come in and just do some science. So yeah, that's now on my bucket list. Kill some insects. Again, and this is the last bit I'll read maybe. More macabre still is the spectacle of insects being so duped by an inflorescence that they proceed to lay eggs in what they mistake as dung or flesh, but on which the hatching maggots starve to death. Like, that is so ruthless. Like, you do what you do to survive when you're a plant, I suppose. I'm not a plant, I don't know for certain, but it's amazing that, you know, these insect species are still around to keep the plants going, because the plants do them a severe injustice. It's real bad, but clever, incredibly clever, making them think that they can eat and breed and relax there. It's a holiday for them. Who needs actual dung when you have this dung-looking flower? That's what they're thinking. And then we have constrictors. So we have every type. We have every type of deceptive, murderous flower in this family. We've got constrictors. Their spathes tighten up and they imprison the pollinators, kind of forcing them to do it. And you can see that with colocasia and alocasia if you've ever looked at one of those inflorescences. And I'll try and find a picture on the internet because I don't have any flowering alocasias at the moment, but they've got like this weird, almost like an hourglass, not really like an hourglass. I don't know how to explain it. I'll show a picture. Their shape, which when you look at it, you can definitely go, yeah, I can see how that'll trap you in there and then, you know, you die. It starts off open and it lets insects in and everything looks good, and then it closes up on them. So then they're stuck. They're stuck. eventually it opens up during the receptive phase, during the female phase. It closes up near the end of that with insects inside it. Then it starts the male phase. Insects get covered in pollen. It opens up again. They reach to get out and they eat all the nectar and they're covered in pollen, and then they move on to the next plant and do the exact same thing. So that is how pollination by constriction, I suppose, kind of works. Then there is, I guess, the outlier, which is the genus Arasaima. It differs from others in having many species that are sexually versatile, with individual plants varying the gender of their inflorescences from year to year, depending on what they need. Thus, in a given population, there may be plants bearing all male, all female, and bisexual inflorescences. Few species have been studied in any detail, but some of those observed show a modification to the spathe design, which safeguards against imprisoning insects that have crawled or fallen into the chamber. So, because that single-sex spadix only has like one phase, which is that single sex, and there's no advantage in keeping your pollinators any longer than you need to, it doesn't actually trap them and restrict them. So I guess the Arasaima is the nicest genus in the group. Maybe. But generally speaking, generally thought it is flies and beetles that pollinate aroid inflorescences. Most likely because, as we said before, the inflorescences look and smell and feel like dung or dead things. And just generally not places I want to be, really. Not at all. However, aroids are extremely diverse in their pollen structure, and that suggests that there is a wide variety of pollinators. So it's not just a single species of beetle, it's not just one type of fly. They kind of pick from the bunch. And obviously, as humans have become very interested in plants, we help things along as well by doing what we can ourselves or providing them with the conditions to allow insects to come in and pollinate them. There are also virgin births. Some species are known to produce fruits without cross-pollination, though it has rarely been established whether they are self-fertilizing or apomicts, the latter being the virgin births of the plant world in which no fertilization takes place at all. So that's also very interesting. This chapter is very fascinating. So then, once we have your female stage, you have your male stage, hopefully something is pollinated, something is, all systems are go, then we get fruit development. So the immature berries, so the little seeds inside the little berries, they have to be protected until they are ready for dispersal. And so aroids do this in a number of ways. The spathe can close up around the inflorescence, and it can remain intact to protect the berries until they're ripe, and then it will open again. The berries will go where they go, and the spathe's job is done. Once the berries are ready to go, the plant then again relies on the rest of nature to help out. So a lot of the time it's birds. There's pretty looking berries. A bird comes and eats the berries. The bird flies around and poops the seeds out. The seeds then grow and make a new plant. It's the circle of life. Apparently, a bunch of berries taste different. However, a lot of them are poisonous to humans, so don't go around eating your aroid berries. Please don't eat them. You might die. Yeah, so they're like real bad, real weird. And that kind of brings us to the end. It's just a lot of like, I don't want to say case studies. It's a lot of specific examples of specific species that are super weird. Just really super weird in what they do. Like, for example, Anthurium scandens, all attempts to cross-pollinate, well, according to Denny in 2000, all attempts to cross-pollinate scandens with another species has failed. So that suggests that they've been like genetically or geographically isolated and have been forced to fend for themselves. And so, yeah, it's just like, what are you doing? And that's amazing, and can I watch it? So yeah, I don't know if you learned something. This isn't really helping you to take care of your plants better. It's more just like the plants that we look after, just if you were a bug, would try and kill you. So be glad you're not a bug, is the moral of this story. Be glad you were neither a fly nor a beetle. Be glad you are a human and don't eat berries. Thank you for watching. Yeah, any questions down below, any comments, any suggestions for the next chapter, let me know. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye.